So many organizations worldwide, in the press release that we've been offered by PwC, say you're still struggling to comprehend and manage cyber risks in an increasingly complex digital society. Now, obviously, we've had quite a high-profile incident of cyber risk, cyber crime, you might say, although I wouldn't speculate any further than that. So essentially, are businesses still struggling to get to grips with this? It seems like we've been cyber crime has been a prevalent issue for quite some years now.
It has, Ewan, but I think it'll never go away. Cybercrime is here to stay, and I think one of the reasons that businesses potentially still struggle is that they're unseen. The criminals are unseen, and on that respect, their attack methods are unseen and unknown, and dare I say it, they have far more money to spend actually on attacking you than most businesses have spending to defend themselves. And so it is always an increasingly difficult problem. We're running to stand still.
Now, PwC has launched a survey based on responses from thousands of senior businesses and tech executives from loads of different countries. So what are you trying to achieve from this? What was the survey? What was the nature of the survey?
So the survey's been running now for a good number of years, at least 7 as far as I can remember. And what it tries to do is it tries to take the temperature of large and medium-sized businesses around the globe and try and understand across many different industries how cyber crime and how information security, in its broadest sense, is impacting them. So a quarter of the respondents come from the US, and then about 25% come from Europe, 20% from Asia, and the rest from kind of the Middle East and from Africa and Latin America.
So what do the findings show? You'll obviously have been analysing them, and we've had this statement that many organisations are struggling to comprehend and manage emerging risks. So what are the findings from the surveys from previous years showed, and indeed this year's results?
So some of the key findings this year's, Ewan, are in some ways still worrying. 44% of our respondents across those 122 countries still don't have an information security strategy. So they still don't understand the importance of the data that they hold and how to protect it and how to manage any breaches that happen as a result of cybercrime. And with that, also we find that what's really quite interesting is over half, 54%, don't have any written plan of how they're going to deal with an incident when it occurs. And what these surveys have been providing us with information, and the news will tell you, it's not an if, it will be a when. And it's really important that businesses understand that it's when they have a cybercrime attack, what do they do about it, not if they ever have a cybercrime attack. As we also finding in these surveys actually that still 48% of those respondents don't have any employee training or awareness program in a formal state. And so when you consider that it's not just the IT and the technology that the businesses need to use to protect their businesses, and it's not just how they deal with it in terms of a process, one of the most important elements is the people. And the people sometimes can be the weakest link, unfortunately. And if you're not training your employees about cybercrime and how to be aware to deal with it, you're not actually dealing with all three areas in equal importance.
Now, what would a responsible business leader do who is really on the money in terms of managing these risks? How would they approach that? What areas can they focus on to ensure? You've mentioned staff training, but what are the other areas that were really important to ensure you have a robust and have a cybercrime strategy, I suppose?
It starts at the top. It starts with the board. It starts with all directors and executives and non-exec directors being aware of it. And I think that people shouldn't be frightened to turn around saying, you know what, I don't fully understand this. I don't fully get cybercrime. And taking then kind of, dare I say it, taking advice, taking some professional advice and other people's experiences to be able to begin to understand how it may impact your business. That has to be the start. Unfortunately, this is going to cost money, and the allocation of finite budgetary resources is a key element. You're going to have to spend money on this, but you're going to, therefore, you're going to have to choose where you spend your money. As I said, there is lots of data that companies hold, and I often talk about kind of the crown jewels of companies' data. The really, really important stuff has to be really quite deeply buried and protected very much. The crown jewels is what you need to put behind your strongest walls, your strongest defences. So you can't spend all the money on every piece of data, so you need to make sure that you use your finite resources cleverly. Absolutely, we spoke about staff, and the people in the business need to be fully aware. They need to understand how threats may arise. They need to understand how they should be dealing with them. The technology is still reasonably important about monitoring those threats. Dare I say it, that there are a number of businesses who probably don't know that they have cyber criminals within their walls already, because they're not monitoring the activity across the sort of the inside-outside firewall, as it's called. So being able to spot what's going on to some level is really quite important. There are many businesses that will help companies do this, as well as kind of providing the software and the hardware technology. So it's all around putting in the right processes, making sure your employees are absolutely aware of what they're doing, being aware as a board of what you need to protect, how important it is for you to protect it as part of your business assets, and then deploying the technology that you can deploy cleverly with the budgets that you've got to maximize the protection that you can afford your data.
Now, you mentioned the costs. Obviously, it will cost money to protect yourself, but is that more of if it's a question of not if, but when, surely that's almost like an investment now. You will see returns because you will be protected.
Yes, you will be. And I think businesses that find themselves understanding the importance of their data and then protecting it as best they can, often they find it's impossible to turn around and say that you can have a competitive advantage, because the last thing you want to do is say, hey, look at me, I've got really good protection and really good cyber defenses, because that's just a red rag to the criminals. They will then try and crack you. But it is important as part of customer service that you ensure that the data that you hold on to is well protected. Many listeners will understand that the island is coming and about to come under new legislation for data protection called the General Data Protection Regulation, and we'll have a local law enacting many of those principles. That then begins to provide for data subjects, i.e. people like you and me, and the data that we give businesses, some additional rights and some comfort and transparencies about how businesses hold on and deal with our data. So companies are going to have to understand that there is a benchmark that they're all going to have to go to ensure that we as customers and clients of those businesses feel that we're being looked after. But it's not just our data; it's corporate data as well. It's it's intellectual property. It's your USP of why you're doing business. You want to also make sure that you protect that as best you can.
Now, let's bring this into, I suppose, an Isle of Man context. You're presenting the findings of your survey at a forum on the 6th of December at the Villa Marina, for which PwC is a sponsor. The event obviously will raise awareness. In terms of an Isle of Man context, how do businesses fare? Do we have any statistics for our own sector? Are we well protected? Obviously, we did have a high-profile incident very recently.
We did. Unfortunately, the Isle of Man doesn't feature singularly in this survey. We didn't have enough respondents from the Isle of Man to get our own kind of cut of the data, so we kind of fall within the UK data. How does the Isle of Man play out against kind of the other nations? I mean, I reckon that from what people I've been talking to, we are no different from any other jurisdiction. We have some really significant businesses on the island that play a large part in our local economy, but also have a large global footprint. In that respect, they are just as likely and just as much a target as let's say Uber and then their recent recognition of a breach, or Google, Yahoo, TalkTalk. These are all large businesses that people are willing to have a go at. I suppose one of the issues is very much around the medium-sized businesses on the island, and how much do they feel a target. As far as I'm concerned, they should feel a target. If a criminal can't get into a business because they've spent quite a lot of money defending their assets, they will turn to the weakest company, and they will find that weakest company, and they will go and exploit it. And so we should all ensure that, to the best of our abilities, we're prepared for this, because the criminals are faceless, but to a certain extent the targets are faceless. They don't mind where they go. They're just going to go where they can get in easiest. And once they find some data, and they find an asset that they can make money from, then the criminals will make money from it.
Now, I'm just throwing this one out there. I'm not sure whether it has relevance, but are there any ways in which standards or legislation or policy in terms of government, or maybe the actions of a body like, I don't know, the Financial Intelligence Unit, is there any way they can offer protection, or at least share data in a way that would help businesses defend against cybercrime?
That's an interesting point. I'm not sure whether or not the FIU is the main body for that, to be honest. But we just recently had the announcement of the National Office of Cybersecurity, created alongside the Cabinet Office. That in itself is a good step forward for the island in terms of its posturing for its national cybersecurity. There are calls, and there are organisations in other countries where you share information about cyber breaches, and I would like to see that actually in a private forum to a certain extent across the island. It is great if those that have experienced a breach can share the method of attack, the mode of attack that the criminals have used, and by sharing that with other like-minded industry companies, you get to a position where the island itself begins to be stronger, because we all understand where the attack is coming from. And PwC does, as a global business, it does monitor what's called threat actor activity. We do monitor cyber criminals. Actually, we monitor globally about 150 different criminal groups and how they attack people. And so we have the ability to if people wish to, we can have the ability to share that information with clients and businesses, so that they can become better prepared by knowing what was the latest iteration of a malware, whether or not it's WannaCry or the Petya or anything else, as two kind of recent ransomwares. So we do monitor that on a completely global basis. So yeah, information sharing, I think, is key for the future.
Now, we've covered good ground there. Probably done way too long of an interview already. But is there anything you'd like to add finally to our discussion today?
I'd encourage people to come along to the Cybercrime Forum, most definitely. It'll be a good opportunity to listen to businesses and listen to the panel members talking about this. Definitely reach out to providers of expertise in the area on the island to understand more about how you can defend your business, and how you can learn about how to defend your business. And obviously, PwC is one of those businesses that would be happy to talk to people about cyber security and information security. I think it just is never going to go away. And businesses need to ensure that they protect themselves from this type of crime as best they can.